One of the 7 priorities in the National Prevention Strategy is tobacco-free living. How does the emergence of new tobacco and nicotine delivery products, such as e-cigarettes, affect your overall strategy to help Americans, in particular youth and young adults, live tobacco-free?
Well, this is a great question, and it's very relevant to today because we have had an explosion of e-cigarette use, particularly among youth. Most people are surprised, for example, to learn that between 2011 and 2014, the use of e-cigarettes by youth grew by 800%. People are also surprised to realize that more kids smoke e-cigarettes today than smoke traditional cigarettes. So this is an extraordinary explosion of e-cigarette use that we've seen. Now, just out of curiosity, just by show of hands, how many people here know somebody who uses e-cigarettes or has used e-cigarettes? So the majority of people in the room. And that's really interesting because your experiences, I think, reflect what many people in the country are experiencing. I was telling some folks at lunch today that the other day I was in Seattle and I was doing a listening session with the community there. And there was a teacher who joined our listening session. And she was really exasperated. And she said to me, she said, look, she's like, we are so confused about e-cigarettes. We don't know what to do. And my kids aren't allowed to chew gum in class, but they can smoke e-cigarettes in the classroom, and they are. And I was taken aback. I said, tell me why your kids are allowed to smoke e-cigarettes in class. She said, well, because they're different from traditional cigarettes. We have a policy against that. We have a policy against gum. We have a policy against drinking alcohol in school. It's illegal. But she said, we don't have a policy around e-cigarettes because the county doesn't have a policy, and we don't know what to do, and we don't know what the science says, and we're not sure what to do. This is not an altogether unusual situation. I've met with mayors, with teachers, with doctors, with others who are confused about what to do with e-cigarettes. And that's why our office this year will be building some important initiatives around e-cigarettes to help the public understand what we know and what we don't know about e-cigarettes. So let me tell you the briefs of what we know and what we don't know. Number one, it's clear to help people understand that e-cigarettes, which are electronic devices for delivering nicotine in vapor form, that these are not harmless water vapor machines. The vapor that comes out of e-cigarettes contains nicotine in it. And we know that nicotine is, number one, highly addictive. But we also know that it can have adverse effects on the developing brain of adolescents, as well as adverse effects on the fetus. So this is not benign. And this is why I believe that there is no reason that children should be using e-cigarettes. That's not something that we should recommend, that we should support. The second thing to know about is that we don't actually fully know the full extent of what's in e-cigarettes. And that's because at present, as of today, they are not regulated. And they may be in the future, but as of today, they are not regulated. Now, once they are regulated, then we will start to understand more of what's in them, understand the degree of benefit or harm from them. But until that point, I certainly, just thinking as a doctor, I wouldn't want my patients to be using things that, when we weren't sure what the ingredients actually were. And then the third point I want to make about this is around an argument that's commonly made with e-cigarettes, or an assertion I should say, which is that they can help people quit smoking. Now, this is a separate issue from whether kids should be using e-cigarettes. Kids should not be using e-cigarettes. They are nicotine products. Nicotine is addictive. It has harmful effects on the developing brain. But the separate question has been raised, well, for people who are having a hard time quitting, e-cigarettes may be able to help them. But here's what the science tells us, which is the science doesn't give us a definitive answer yet as to whether or not e-cigarettes are both safe and effective for cessation. And until they do, until we know that for sure, we can't recommend them for cessation. For example, we wouldn't know how much to recommend, in what dosage, for what kind of people, what kind of side effects we should look out for. This is the reason that anything that we recommend for cessation or for medical purposes, we put through a rigorous review. We have it go through an FDA review process so we can be assured about safety and efficacy. And until we have that kind of rigor in science, we shouldn't be recommending e-cigarettes as cessation devices. So that's sort of what you need to know about e-cigarettes. But there's a lot more to be said. There's a passionate community of people who believe that e-cigarette use should be allowed, that it should be be put forth as a tool for cessation. And it may very well be that once we gather all the science and do the studies we need to do, we might find that e-cigarettes are safe and effective for cessation, but we don't know that right now. And this is an area where I feel like it's essential that we allow the science to guide us when it comes to policy making and practice.